So thanks for checking out the channel. Thanks for taking your time and conscious awareness to check out these videos and give really wonderful suggestions. I have a couple weeks finishing up end of the semester stuff, and summer's coming up, and I'll get a chance to. I've got so many notes on videos I want to make, a lot of them coming from your suggestions. So I'll get to these real soon. I had to make a video today on how often the thinking mind hijacks our emotions so much that for many of us, we haven't even had an actual emotion without the influence of the thinking mind. In fact, if you look in Western science, what kind of theories we have on emotion, and I talked about this in another video, we have what's called the two-factor theory of emotion. It still exists as the dominant theory of emotional processes. And the basic idea is that there's two aspects to emotion. One is just the raw bodily experiences of maybe sweating or your heart beating. The second is the cognitive, interpretive function of the thinking mind. And so maybe my heart's beating and I'm sweating, and I look down and I see a winning lottery ticket. Well, then I become excited. So the thinking mind puts that emotion into a particular mental box. If I, look down in the mail and I haven't paid my taxes in 5 years and the IRS is coming after me, the thinking mind gives a completely different interpretation to that same bodily experience. Now, there's so much data on the two-factor theory of emotion, you really can't, you can't argue with the data itself. But one of the things that seems to be missing is because we're so caught up in the thinking mind, particularly here in the West, we never contemplate the possibility, thinking mind never contemplates the possibility of its influence. I mean, what were emotions experienced like before the thinking mind came on the scene? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a suggestion and a couple practices so you can experience for yourself exactly how there's no real two-factor. I mean, there is a two-factor theory of emotion, but we can actually lose one of those factors altogether. We can lose the thinking mind's influence on putting these raw emotions in mental boxes. And when we do, we'll start experiencing emotions. For many people, you'll start experiencing emotions for the very first time. And they're nothing like you thought they were. And the best example of this is to use the Wim Hof method. And I've talked about this in another video. So Wim Hof is having people go out and get cold exposure. The cool thing about cold exposure is you realize that you were taught to experience cold. 2 degrees. We're not talking 0 Kelvin or something like that. But if it's 30 degrees out, and if you look around, sometimes, you go for a walk and you see, deer, and people are, well, how can they not be cold? Well, we know this, again, from research with kids. And, if kids aren't taught to be cold, they don't feel cold. So what happens is that we've had the experience when we were young, but then people told us that's cold. And they acted in a way that it was a really negative experience. So the two-factor theory, again, you've got the raw bodily sensation, but then our thinking process put that into a mental box that said, this is cold, this is bad. That's why we say you could catch cold. Like, it's something you could catch. It's contagious. It's so bad we need to avoid it. So when you go out and you do the cold exposure, what you're doing is deprogramming the thinking mind's mental box. And you realize that, cold isn't really cold. You get to the raw experience of it and you realize that it's nothing like you thought it felt like. It's such a new experience. And so we can apply this not just to the sensation of being cold, but the point of the video is you can apply this to all of our emotions. And so so you may be so convinced right now that you just have anger issues, or you're sad, or maybe life just seems meaningless and you're just kind of like, where is the meaning? And I did a couple of videos on this before too. And so, but all of these emotions, for the average person, they're completely unaware how much the thinking mind is putting these raw emotions into some mental box based on its programming. So the next time you're really angry, the first thing is do the cold exposure. And the reason you want to do this is so you can have the raw experience yourself that what you thought was cold wasn't what you thought it was. In other words, you can get to the raw experience. You're taking that two factor and you're eliminating one of the factors, the thinking process. And you can start experiencing it. And the interesting thing is how what a mystery it is. And that's the thing about the thinking mind. It comes along and it supposedly organizes the world, simplifies things. But in that simplification, it loses a lot of information. It loses a lot of the experiences that we could have without it. And so it seems all new, like it's the first time you're feeling it, and you're not really sure how to label it. You're not really sure what mental box to put it in. But the interesting thing is that when you stop the thinking mind from, well, it's going to put it in a box, but what you're doing is you're distancing yourself, you're questioning, you're becoming skeptical whether that mental box is actual reality. And when you do that, these emotions seem all absolutely new and interesting to you. So if you're experiencing this and maybe life seems meaningless, or maybe you're just angry and you just can't get over it, something that just has you frustrated, go into the experience, but map it onto that cold exposure experience. Once you've had that experience, it opens up a door. I don't think it's just a coincidence that Wim Hof came along right now at this time. I think that his method is acting as a door that's opening up how much the thinking mind has influenced us. And it's going to be part of a whole series of other events that are going to show us how much the thinking mind has put the vastness of consciousness into these tiny mental boxes, and which is one of them, is our concept of self. And we're living lives that is constrained by thinking, and the thinking even extends to our emotions. So emotions. So I said this in some other videos. Don't believe everything you think. Well, we can take this a little further. Don't believe everything you feel. The feelings that we're having are so influenced by the thinking mind that they're just mental constructs. But you have to experience it for yourself. And so I'd be interested in your feedback on this video.